Hello and welcome into a college football edition of BVM Sports Chalk Talk. I'm Mike Cianciolo, joined alongside Scott Procter and Matt Morris. We are halfway through the season and looking at the AP top 10 teams. Half of those represent the Big Ten Conference. Iowa at number 2, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan at 6, 7, and 8 respectively. And rounding out the top 10 is Michigan State. And guys, looking at it so far, you have 5 teams in the top 10 represented by the Big Ten. Who do you have coming out of this conference?
For me, it's still Ohio State. Listen, the Buckeyes lead the nation in yards per game, putting up over 560 yards of total offense each and every week. They're still 7th in the nation in points scored per game, dropping 48.5 on the scoreboard every single week. And C.J. Stroud, their redshirt freshman quarterback, has really settled in after making his first collegiate start just last month. He has an 18-3 touchdown to interception ratio, which is always good. And it helps when you have the nation's best wide receiver duo at your disposal. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson have identical stat lines basically this season, which just speaks to how great each of them are individually. As always, the Buckeyes have a running game with Travion Henderson. But the question has been the defense. Obviously, Oregon kind of ran all over them, and the Buckeyes only lost earlier this season, putting up 259 yards on the ground. But Ryan Day responded. And the head coach kind of changed the defensive play caller right after that game. This defense has responded. They've only given up 37 points over the last 3 weeks, albeit to some lesser competition. But as long as that unit continues to come around and improve, nobody's offense in the Big Ten is as explosive as Ohio State. So that's what I think is going to carry them to a Big Ten title again this year.
See, you're going offense. I'm going to start with the defense, and that's why I'm going with Iowa. Iowa leads the nation with 16 interceptions. That pass defense is one of the best. It's so many, and they had 4 in the Big Penn State win at Kinnick Stadium. I think that although this offense for Iowa is not that great, if it was to go down to Ohio State, great offense versus Iowa, great defense, I might go with Iowa this season. And I think that with Petrus and how they were able to finish that game against a tough Penn State defense, they showed some glimpses of what they could put together. Goodson is good for them. Laporta is great as a tight end option. And then the other thing is that because of their dominant defense, you look at what they're able to do in special teams, and that actually comes into fact. I mean, Torrey Taylor was unbelievable for punting for them, pinning Penn State deep in their own territory, and then allowing that defense to really just pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. I think that defense and the special teams sets up the offense to be successful. And this is an Iowa team that right now, they won their biggest game. Now they have to just finish out the season and see who they'll face in the Big Ten championship.
I don't think there's ever really a question, or at least this year, in terms of who's going to win that division. Iowa's going to win their division. Obviously comes to the other side of it in the Big Ten, where you've got Michigan State, Ohio State. Who's going to come out over there? I kind of like Sparty. I like them in an underdog role.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say definitively, they're going to go off and win the Big Ten this year, but I think they've got a good chance to try and play the upset there. They've got the 15th best offense in terms of total yardage. Kenneth Walker III is going to be hitting the 1,000-yard mark rushing-wise this weekend against Indiana. The Spartans have a good pass rush defense. They're 4th in the country in sacks with 23. And then they really have the opportunity to bolster their resume, sitting right now at the lowest point of these Big Ten teams that we're discussing. But they've got an opportunity to, at home, beat Michigan and Penn State if they can do that. And then a great opportunity on the road against Ohio State. If they were to get even probably 2 of those, I think they would be in a really good position to set themselves up for a date in the Big Ten championship game.
I mean, the Spartans have the best setup as far as schedule goes, really able to, kind of fine-tune everything and get it ready, because everything will be decided in, like you said, those last 2 games, and they don't have to worry about it right now. They can get everything prepared and have their best football heading into games against Ohio State and Penn State.
Yeah, I really like Michigan State. Obviously, they're undefeated right now. Matt knows this. I've been talking about them for the last week or so off the air. And you mentioned, I think that's going to be Ohio State's biggest test, down the stretch here, and that's going to be a pivotal game that I'm going to be watching. Michigan State, you mentioned what they're able to do defensively. They lead the Big Ten in sacks, and Kenneth Walker is one of the 2 or 3 or 4 best running backs in the entire country. So, when you can get after somebody's quarterback and you can control the clock with the run game, both things Michigan State can do very well. I think that kind of bodes well for, that inevitable Michigan State, Ohio State matchup. And, I have to go to your pick a little bit with Iowa. They are dead last in the Big Ten in total yards per game offensively. So they arguably have the worst offense in terms of, scoring the ball and, moving the ball down the field in the entire conference. And, obviously that defense is stout, probably the best, but I don't know as this season wanes, if that offense led by Petras is going to be able to put up the points needed to, beat Ohio State or, keep up with Michigan State's run game or something similar to that. So
no, I understand.
That's my biggest question. That's why I'm really off Iowa at this point from what I've seen so far.
Like I said, it does come down to if they can string some stuff together. But I think if you watch that Penn State game, yes, there was a big injury. Sean Clifford definitely affected that outcome. But Penn State's defense was still Penn State's defense. And when it came down to it, they needed that score. They called up a great play. They made it happen. They picked up the tempo a little bit, which I think helped them as well. And at the end of the day, if you're going to play the field position game, you're going to be able to pin the opposing team back deep in their own territory and then trust a defense that is creating turnovers all over the field. I think that bodes well. And then all you have to ask of the offense is just to be consistent. And I think with that big win, Iowa can kind of do what Michigan State has done all season and continue to fine-tune that stuff and be playing their best football heading into the Big Ten championship.
It'll be interesting, but I definitely can't wait for that that Michigan State, Ohio State game later this year. But I'm rolling with the Buckeyes to finish things out here.
Real quick, how many Big Ten teams do you think make the playoffs?
One at most.
I think at least
I think
one.
Ohio State sneaks in, and that's how I'm feeling right now.
You don't think they could get two?
No.
Because I think it comes down to the SEC. I think Bama still beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, so then you're probably going to have for sure Bama in there. Georgia might still make it in because they're clearly number one in one loss. I mean,
that's the biggest thing. I think per usual, I think the SEC gets two in, Georgia and Alabama, and then maybe the Big Ten gets one, and maybe probably a Cincinnati or a Big 12 team. That's
especially if Oklahoma stays undefeated.
Right.
All right. Well, we will see who will come out of the Big Ten. Obviously, there's a handful of representatives that could very well be that team. We'll just have to see how it all unfolds in the upcoming weeks. That'll do it for our college football conversation. For Scott Procter and Matt Morris, I'm Mike Cianciolo. Thanks for watching Chalk Talk.